Yo, what's up? This is Mikey Dab, and welcome to the Hype Report. Each week we recap the biggest stories from HYPEBEAST directly from the minds of the editorial team. I'm here to connect the dots. Let's get into this week's show.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I am Kareem Cooper. I'm the social media video producer at HYPEBEAST. Today, we're talking about Tekashi 69. So he took the stand this past Tuesday to testify against Anthony Harv Ellison and Aljamira Nuke Mack. What's gotten everyone's attention about this case is that this is the first time Tekashi has taken a stand. It was speculated for a while since his arrest that he would be talking on the stand. It's ironic considering, his past. His past was several, like, hey, I'm down to do whatever. I'm a gangster. A lot of that. This past Tuesday, they brought him up on stand to talk about the origins of how he met the alleged gang members of the 9 Trey Bloods. According to Tekashi, everything started in 2017 for the Gomo video. Mm-hmm. So during the Gomo video, he reached out to a friend. He told his friend he needed a few gang members in the video. It'd be good for his image. And after that, things took off. If you remember the Gomo video, it was a lot of red bandanas, a lot of gangsters, and it was, it propelled him to stardom. The way Tekashi explained it on the stand is that because of his success and because of the money he was bringing in, he basically was initiated into the gang by that. His responsibilities for the gang was to provide financial stability for the gang. And according to him, he said his role was to just keep making hits. So this past Tuesday, when he was in the courtroom, they basically brought up the origin of the gang. Ironically enough, they actually played some of the videos in court, had him talk about some of the lyrics in court. It was pretty interesting to hear, the guy who once said a bunch of stuff that he was never going to do the things that he's doing currently right now. I mean,
sadly, I'm just going to double dutch him before we finish the next 2 days, but sadly, he paid them for an image and people bought said image. Not everybody. A lot of people were trying to call him out off rip that he's not really that type of person. Yeah. He's not from the streets. He's not really, just because you got face tattoos doesn't really mean anything.
Exactly, yeah.
So I like the takeaway from this, from what I'm seeing right now, the takeaway is that maybe, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover.
That may be the whole, point of all this story. Maybe one thing we'll all learn from this. Day 2 of the testimony was pretty much where things intensified. That's when he got into the details of things. He broke down what certain hand gestures mean. He broke down certain meanings of certain words that are generally just gang terminology that he used against, Nuke and Mac. In day 2, he talked about the kidnapping. Basically, if you all remember, it was maybe last year, it was a pretty, scary story. Out of the blue, Tekashi was kidnapped by, allegedly, Harv, who is one of the people he's testifying against right now. According to Tekashi, they were driving in a car with his driver. His car got hit from behind. Out of the car came Harv, one of the men he's testifying against. And according to Tekashi, they forced him out the car. They attacked him, pistol whipped him, and threw him in the car. Eventually dropped him off to his house where they took a bunch of jewelry and left him. Following that, Tekashi was, in the hospital. It was kind of the turning point for Tekashi's career a little bit. It was the first time we ever seen him in any type of victimized situation. Before that, he's kind of the aggressor in a lot of the beefs he were in. He detailed some of these other beefs. His beef with Chief Keef. Basically, he paid someone $10,000 to shoot at Chief Keef in Times Square. He detailed his beef with Casanova, another alleged rival gang member. Apparently, he saw Casanova's people in the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, and an attack almost happened until one of 69's friends or alleged gang members, shot a gun inside of the Barclays. And if you've ever been inside the Barclays, I don't know how that's possible. And then another beef that he detailed was his beef with Rap-A-Lot Records. Rap-A-Lot Records is the Houston imprint run by Jay Prince. Apparently, Tekashi was in Dallas, Texas. He had a show a little while back. So the show in Dallas, Texas was pretty interesting because, I guess within the gang culture world, there's a thing called checking in, right? I don't know the details on it,
No, when you come into another rapper, anybody's territory that is known in that territory, you got to check in.
Well, what does that mean?
That means, listen, I know somebody knows somebody who knows somebody. Okay. You hit that person up, be like, listen, just let your mans know I'm coming through. Mm-hmm. If you want to chill, you want to cook out, whatever you want to do, okay, we'll be here. Yeah. Come through, everything's on us, chill out a little bit, get to know each other, whatever. You know what I'm saying? I'm checking in with you.
Gotcha.
I'm not just coming here and I'm gonna start flexing on the gram like this is my spot. Yeah. People running up to me and like, well, who are you?
I gotcha. Well, in this case, allegedly 6ix9ine wasn't about the checking in stuff. And we remember the story of 6ix9ine. He said he's not checking in anywhere. And apparently he went to Texas and he did just that. He had a show and the Rap-A-Lot Records affiliates, according to him, did not let him perform on stage. From there, a little beef started between Rap A Lot Records and Tekashi and his gang, 9 Trey gang. So basically, Tekashi ran into some of them in Times Square. When his former manager, Shadi, apparently saw them in Times Square, saw the Rap A Lot, affiliates in Times Square, pulled out a gun and attempted robbery in Times Square. Actually, it wasn't an attempted robbery. According to everything that's happened so far, it was a robbery. They found the backpack of the things that were stolen in Tekashi's house when they raided it. So Tekashi broke down that situation and basically said that, hey, it was just retaliation for what happened in Texas, basically. Day 3 finally came. Day 3 was basically the cross-examination part. This is where the defense to the accused basically, questioned 69 and some stuff. One of the biggest takeaways from Day 3 was Tekashi saying that if given time served, he can possibly come out in 2020. When he first came in, they were saying he had a mandatory minimum of 47 years. Mm-hmm. We could think what we wanted about the tell-in, but I guess for him it's working. He might be out in 2020, and
it's not working. I mean, listen, the code of the streets. Listen, they should have known what they were getting. Definitely. when they scooped him up. If we're going to use somebody as a mascot for this, you probably shouldn't have let him in on a lot of other things.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, what leg does he have to stand on in theory if he's saying, I paid them for protection, right? In the payment was basically, funds.
Exactly.
I'm giving them money for me to uphold my image. Now, in all these other incidences of someone getting robbed or whatever the situation is, or not checking in or trolling that he likes to do, you're also perpetuating that yourself. So how much can you really point a finger at Nuke and Irv based on your own actions?
Exactly.
And even in the kidnapping scenario was such that he was not doing what he was supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
He was saying some things he wasn't supposed to be saying, and they ran up on him. It is what it is.
Actually, according to 69, he said that basically there was friction in the gang. Basically, he's this prized possession within the gang. He didn't have to really do any criminal things per se to get into the gang. He even said the initiation usually is, according to him, the initiation was you had to commit a crime to be part of the gang. He didn't have to do any of that because of who he was and the money he was providing. He was seen as his prized possession, and he said that he was providing a lot of money for a bunch of the gang members, and it came to the point where there was friction in the gang of who was going to control his career, who's going to manage him. Harv was one of his road managers, he said. Eventually he had to let Harv go to the point where his other manager, Shadi, and Harv had into some friction, and then the other accused, Nuke, also got into some friction. It was a lot of beef between them, but it all stemmed from 69 and figuring out where is this money going to go, who is the one that's going to be back in his career, kind of. And I think that's where everything started to falter, because according to 6ix9ine, there was beef between some of the higher ups within this crew. And I'm pretty sure that beef was not there before 6ix9ine came into the play. So even in this case, it's more so there is blame to go on both sides. Tekashi for bringing himself into the situation, and the gang for allowing this guy who's really not a part of it to become a part of it simply for financial opportunities. Also on Day 3, he was asked about Jim Jones' 9 Trey affiliation, and he basically stated, hey, Jim Jones is a part of this as well. The reason why Jim Jones was brought up before then was because the defense, I believe, played a wiretapped tape between Jim Jones and Murder Mel. In the conversation, you can hear Jim basically, saying, hey, maybe we might have to do something, or something might have to happen to 6ix9ine because of him going kind of rogue on the gang. Day 3 was pretty interesting for the cross-examination. They also played his Angie Martinez interview, and they played his Breakfast Club interview. Basically, some of the defense was saying that he lied about the kidnapping, the
actual situation. But listen, at the end of the day, he has to make it sound better than it really was. Yeah. I mean, they also played, which they weren't supposed to have any recordings from the court at all. Somehow they appeared. I think it was Day 1, someone got canned or fired from the courthouse based on pictures that he had taken. They played what was it, the recording? There was a recording in the back of the truck. I don't know how they had this footage. It was a camera in the back of the Suburban or whatever the SUV was. Yeah. And you can hear the entire conversation. Yeah. So it sounds like he got ran up on.
He definitely got ran up on. And the scary part about it is that, so there is footage of it, and it's online now. I believe that, well, basically once it's presented in court, it's now available to the public. This is why a lot of these things are now online. And the video of the kidnapping, I watched it the other day. The part that he kind of embellished was back on the Angie Martinez interview. He stated that, he was in the car and he fought his way out and escaped and ran away. and then, finds a way to the hospital. The tape and the evidence prove that, that's not what happened. They just robbed him and left him off.
My question is, where'd they get the tape from?
Oh, so the tape was in his driver's Jorge's car. He had one of the dashboard footage cameras, and
the one I saw was from the back of the truck. I don't know. That's a little suspect.
You think it's suspect? You think Jorge's in it?
I think something along the lines of they were like clout, and they wanted to have everything recorded just in case they needed to use it or whatever have you.
There's actually another great point, because within Tekashi's testimony, he actually said that Harv pulled out a camera during their kidnapping and started recording him with the flash on and everything, telling 69 to denounce his affiliation with the gang. So according to 69, after that happened, he rushed to put out the photo of him in the hospital just to beat Harv to like the punch of saying, hey, this happened to me. So it was basically 69 trying to one up Harv before that footage came out.
Yeah.
And it just so happens that the first time we ever saw any type of footage from this night just happened to be, yesterday during the testimony.
I mean, this whole situation just is crazy to me. Especially like listening to the lyrics of any one of the songs, it's so contradictory. It's like, I don't really think that's you, my friend.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I think that the largest takeaway from the entire situation is the fact that he was never who he said he was.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And listening to that conversation, even if there was a troll situation as far as getting robbed out of the car and they set that up because there was an album coming out and they want to have a little hype on it. Like, listen, all artists do that. There's always, whenever an album's coming out, there's beef with another rapper, and all of a sudden people listen to whatever. That's all well and good. But at the end of the day, like, you're way too far past any kind of reconciliation on that.
Exactly.
Your street cred is gone, which you probably shouldn't have had before.
The crazy thing about it is that, like, hip hop in general and the street culture has always kind of been adjacent. You can see situations not exactly like this, but it's been similar situations. We've seen gang stuff in hip hop with like Biggie and Tupac. We've heard of these things before, but this was the first time that it existed within the social media age, where it kind of was everywhere you looked. When he was out, Tekashi was on everybody's feed. It was everywhere. It was top page news. He was getting all the views on all the websites. You fast forward to today, and it's just insane here. The true stories behind all of these things that were happening. I think even the Barclays shooting with Casanova that he said happened, they played a tape from Instagram. So as you know, back in 2018 when 69 was everywhere, he always posted social media videos of himself talking about incidents or after an incident. So after the Barclays incident, he posted on IG a video of himself at the Barclays talking about the shooting, literally a few minutes after the shooting. Like, you watch the video, it says the big Barclays sign in the back. Like, it's evident, hey, this just happened. Even in the video, he's talking about the shooting. So that footage made it to court the other day. You know what I mean? So a lot of the things that he was doing came back to bite him in the butt. And you're just seeing it right now happen in real time. And the way it's unfolding with, like, him basically crumbling an entire criminal organization because of, his hunger for fame and their hunger for money. The two met, and it's destructive circumstances.
We got to stay up to date on this bad boy, because I'm sure there's going to be plenty more.
Definitely. I think, so this past Thursday was the last of the testimony, and now it's up to the court, I believe, and I'm interested to see what happens.
Interested to say the least.
Yes, exactly.
All right, pleasure, Kareem. Catch you later.
For sure.
If you want to stay up on the latest music news, check out Hypebeast Music on Instagram or go to hypebeast.com/music.
Hey, how's it going? This is Keith Estiler, art editor at HYPEBEAST.
Good morning, Keith. What's going on in the art world today?
All right, so I think the biggest exhibition that launched this week internationally is KAWS's Companionship in the Age of Loneliness at the National Gallery of Victoria in Melbourne. It marks his first debut solo show in Australia as a whole, and it's a 25-year survey.
That, honestly, the title alone captivated me. I just started immediately thinking about like youth growing up now and social media. And I think it's kind of what the art director there was touching on, that it reached out to him in that way as well, where like, it's just, even though there's so many ways to connect to people, it's such a lonely time.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of people that connected with KAWS because he's been in the industry for like, maybe the past 20 years. This year also marks the 20-year anniversary of his, very ubiquitous companion character. And the show is divided into 4 parts. One part is dedicated to his abstract paintings. Second one is for the companion. The third one is his iconography, the crossbones motif.
Yes.
And the fourth one is dedicated to his public interventions. So like the bus stop ads that you would see like in New York and New Jersey,
The
like
early on
in the
stuff.
80s.
Yeah. So, in reference to the art, well, let's go with location first. So it's in Melbourne, right?
Yep.
So I like the fact that it wasn't anywhere. Well, he's kind of been working in that general area, so to speak. Didn't he have the large float that they put? They put that super. Where was the float?
The last KAWS holiday float was in Mount Fuji in Japan.
So he's been working in that general area, but back to the actual topic here. So I like the fact that it's there because anytime something happens in New York or anywhere in the U.S., I feel like it just becomes a hype thing, and the actual idea behind the project gets lost.
Yeah.
So reading it this way, it's actually easier for me to digest exactly what the message is or what it's meant to be, as opposed to being like, oh, if something drops here, let's just go wait in line and see if some hype item comes with it. So I like that aspect because you understand that something's happening. It actually makes me want to go there and see the piece as opposed to when it's here. Like I want to see it, but I'm more intrigued about what's going to come with it.
Yeah. I mean, the last big show that he had here stateside was in Museum of Contemporary Art in Detroit. So although I feel like it is stateside, I do feel like it's awesome for KAWS to kind of bring attention to Detroit because of, what's been going on. And it's really nice to see it in an area. It is his first time showing in Detroit. So yeah, I do get the geographic relevancy. Being from New York as well, I think it's good to see that KAWS is venturing elsewhere and showing his art to people who haven't seen his works before in person.
World renowned,
yeah,
so to speak. What was I think the largest piece that he's done is being showcased at this specific venue.
Yeah, so the largest bronze sculpture that he's ever created just made its debut at this exhibition too. It's called Gone, and it features his companion character holding his BFF character and kind of embracing him and
kind of enjoy that piece a lot.
Yeah,
it speaks to me on so many levels because it's even the coloring that's chosen to do both pieces, the one that's being held and the companion holding him is gray, and then the color popping. It's like I'm supporting you and I'm bringing you to life kind of with the color. Obviously it's interpretive, so you can do whatever you want with it. But for me, it just feels so, I felt captivated looking at the piece.
Well, I think the piece that you're talking about is his vinyl figures.
Yes.
So the statue itself, it's all black.
Oh.
Yeah, but it's a good segue into the vinyl figures because he's selling 2 of them at the NGV design store, which is the museum design store. And it's the first time that they're doing this pop-up sort of activation. But there's this new trend of museums opening up these sort of pop-up dedicated shops for their artists. The main one, the most recent example is Virgil Abloh in
MCA.
MCA.
So that rolls me right into the hype idea. So obviously they're following the hype train because MoMA has the MoMA store, and the MoMA store does pop-ups once in a while. They did that for the Virgil again when they did the Air Force One. When the first Air Force One was at the MoMA pop-up, but then they moved it to a different location because it was too many people. But I get it. It's exposure. It's exposure for the museum because most kids aren't running to a museum.
Yeah.
Unless there's a product that's going to come out of that museum. So I get it. It makes sense to me. I'm not mad at it.
It makes sense for an artist like KAWS because of the scale of the exhibition too, and the significance of it being a survey more than just a solo exhibition of new works. The scale, I think, relates to the relevancy of a pop-up design store being in the
Yeah, I mean, and you can base that off of the amount of attention it gets on social media.
Yeah.
I mean, if you put up a post about, MCA having this pop-up location, you see the amount of people in the comment section, how do I get there? What's the address? All of that's reconfirmed through social media that it's obvious that it's a necessary, I wouldn't say evil, but it's just a necessary thing for museums to have.
You think that now?
I definitely think it now.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a MoMA member, but I just like to go to kind of lose myself a little bit. Every time I walk through a museum, it's never I'm in a rush, especially living in New York. There's hustle and bustle, LA, Chicago. It's just fast paced. You step into a museum and it almost feels like you're in a bubble. And you're just looking at timeless pieces and you're looking at artists. Your phone half the time doesn't even work unless you want to take a picture and then you have to put it away. But I enjoy and embody that very much so. Yeah. So it's nice to see that kids can have a reason to go. Even if 300 kids go, or whatever the situation is for that hyped item, and 10 walk inside the museum and actually walk around, then cool, I'll take that, because that's 10 more than before.
Speaking of kids too, he also launched another exhibition that's running concurrently with Companionship in the Age of Loneliness. It's called Playtime, and that's entirely dedicated to kids. And what that exhibition is about, it's about getting to know more of his BFF character. His BFF character is like the star of that exhibition for children. And there's a lot of, there's interactive games, screenings, and different sort of art experiences with BFF that kids, can try out and interact with.
Well, that's pretty dope. I'm gonna have to check into that myself. I'm pretty sure that's based off of his daughter, though, because I always see on his gram, his daughter's always drawing something or like taking apart whatever he's drawn. So that's cool. All right, well, let's check back with you next week.
Yeah, man.
Always a pleasure. Dad's on the mic, you already know.
Yep.
For the latest in art and design news, follow HYPEBEAST Art on Instagram or go to hypebeast.com/art.
Hey, this is Isaac Rouse, Associate Editor for HYPEBEAST. We are talking about the new Boondocks Reboot that will be coming exclusively to HBO Max. It'll be 2 seasons, reimagined completely. Aaron McGruder, the creator of the comic strip, will be returning. And this is pretty big news in the streaming service.
Pretty big news.
Yeah.
Pretty, I don't know, for Boondocks fans.
Sure.
Okay, so what you just said was they're bringing back all of the old seasons, so someone like myself can catch up,
right,
or actually start it, because I've never watched Boondocks seasons one day in my life.
Insanity.
And then there's 2 new seasons.
Right.
Now, do you think the 2 new seasons are going to follow? Well, obviously, you just said the creator is going to come on for the next 2 seasons.
Right, so that's the thing. The last season of the original Boondocks, the creator did not come back. It was for Adult Swim, and it tanked pretty badly. It kind of ended the series. And so it coming back now, but under the HBO Max umbrella, is kind of different, but it's also exciting just because Aaron McGruder is back on board and it's part of a streaming service as opposed to just coming back to Adult Swim, meaning like...
It's paid. Let's be realistic. Adult Swim is cool, but...
Right.
It's HBO.
Right.
HBO is going to be like, listen, let's get the dragons, let's get whatever we need to make this poppin' again.
Production value will increase. So it's a pretty bold step in terms of like getting audiences to gravitate towards your streaming service. Like they have an actual show that has a built-in core audience that will now consider getting HBO Max where previously they may not have.
So bigger question here is, what's the age group for said Boondocks fans?
I feel like when the Boondocks originally came out, it was a big thing for high school, young adult.
Let's do this real quick. When did the first episode air?
So the original came out in 2005. It's been almost 20 years pretty much. The new show will be coming back in 2020. I feel like it's an entirely new landscape.
I feel like we're talking about Bad Boys again.
Kind of. Not really, because where the Boondocks did a lot of social commentary that people found exciting and new and edgy, and it broke new ground. Like, there weren't any shows that were covering those particular conversations, even though there are Black shows that cover topics within their own, like our own community. Mm-hmm. Boondocks was actually taking a couple of topics to task.
What about a little show on Comedy Central? What's that show called? Oh, it's a bunch of kids. South Park. Yeah, that's they're saying things about America in general, I feel like. I feel like that counts.
It does count, but I feel like...
Specifically driven.
Right, it's more niche, but climate has changed. The Boondocks is a very controversial show. It always has been, but controversy is at an all-time high right now. So although there are a lot of fans right now that are happy, there are also a lot of fans saying, can we actually take this kind of social commentary? Like the same kind of things that we were getting from the last series where they were taking R. Kelly to task. They were talking about Martin Luther King being alive today and would his feelings on the community change based on where we've gone. So there,
Juicy Smoulier, if you're familiar.
There are a litany of topics that this show can tackle that could go either way. It could break ground for future conversation, or it can get a lot of backlash.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm fearful for the group of people that want to hear it, but then also want to shame it.
Right.
They're like, oh yeah, we're all for speaking out about what you feel, about what's right, and then the second they don't like what someone else is saying, they immediately attack. So it's like, do you really want to hear it, or are you just trying to be an advocate or a champion for saying what you want?
That's the thing. The Boondocks, to a larger extent, Aaron Magruder had a lot of these topics and ideas and ways of thinking that leaned for further conversations and topics on certain things. Whereas now, even though Aaron Magruder was the mouthpiece of the Boondocks and he's coming back, a lot of the things that he said in his previous show that took a lot of...
So they're not really clear on the scope.
There's a few other things that like haven't been announced yet. Regina King used to do the voices for both Riley and Huey. There's no word on whether she's coming back or not. John Witherspoon, who did the voice for Granddad, originally said on Joe Rogan Experience that they were coming back like ahead of the official announced date. So people are expecting him to come back. John Witherspoon announced that he'd be part of the reboot ahead of the official announcement. But it sounds like, based off the official announcement, that the show is going to put more of an emphasis on the Uncle Ruckus character, which could be problematic. He is a character who is a complete racist. He's a black man, old black man, but he is absolutely racist against black people, loves white people, and I feel like they're going to kind of use that to juxtapose kind of where we're at with the alt-right sort of thing in society right now. So
when does this air? Let's go with that.
2020, sometime in 2020.
Sometime in 2020. So we're gonna have to revisit this. You do know that, and I'm gonna binge watch. I'm not gonna. I kid you not. I will binge watch every single season from 2005 until now.
Because Mikey has never watched an episode of the Boondocks ever.
You're just gonna keep telling people. All right. So fair enough. That's fair. I'm gonna let that one slide. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna watch every single episode, and I'm gonna take notes. And then I'm going to come back to you after it airs, and we've watched at least one season. Or I wonder if they're going to drop the whole season in one clip, or they can do like HBO, like every other week, like drop an episode.
That's the thing. I'm hoping it's just a full-on drop everything kind of situation, but it feels like a lot of streaming services are trying to.
Well, Netflix announced that they were going to pull back on that.
Yeah, they are.
Guess what I'm going to do, Netflix? Pull back on paying you. How about that?
It's a weird time right now. Like, the Boondocks coming back is great. The Boondocks coming back on HBO Max is great for the Boondocks and Aaron Magruder as far as production value and being able to express themselves more, but it's also pretty wild seeing a franchise come back and being propelled as a selling point for a streaming service. I feel like a lot. Netflix is doing it with Seinfeld, even though they're doing that as a result of losing like The Office and Parks and Recreation to this Peacock platform coming from NBC.
I don't even know what is going on. But like the problem is they're all getting so divided that it's almost taking away from each and every single, like I'm not going to end up paying $300 a month for streaming services. I'm going to pick the one I like the most and I'm going to pay for that one. Like you're better off teaming up and like taking over the world instead of divide and conquer. I don't know, man.
No, corporations are too selfish. That's what Netflix was originally supposed to be, but you know,
everything in one house.
Corporations see how much that takes off. They want to launch their own platform. Feel like they have a big enough library to do such things. But I would be interested to know how many people would put HBO Max in their platform Rolodex. It has the swayed opinions of people wanting to get HBO Max.
I tell you right now, if it wasn't for this, I would not be buying it.
Absolutely.
I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, I'm probably gonna binge watch it and cancel it. It's exactly how this is gonna work out. So it'd be like 2020. I'm gonna have it for about a week and a half. No, if I binge watch, probably about a week. And then it's getting canceled. Like, I don't need to watch anything else. So what's else going to be there? Game of Thrones? I've seen every episode. Like,
That's very true.
Similar to this, George R.R. Martin is coming back for the reprisal, or actually the prequel to Game of Thrones. So it's almost a very similar situation where they're like, all right, well, these guys ruined it for you guys at the end of this. We're going to bring back George R.R. Martin as a writer, and then we're going to continue on with, I forget the actual name of the night something? The long night. Yeah. So they're doing that as like, but it's George R. R. Martin. It's like the same exact idea.
It's weird though. The way Game of Thrones ended, I wonder how many people are going to return to a spinoff.
They're coming back.
You think
it's George R. R. Martin. D&D had the rights to finish off the way that they wanted to finish off, and George R. R. Martin signed off on it. But like, I think he knew that they were destroying what it was that he had built,
which is why he distanced himself.
Which is why he stepped away, but he also stepped into the role for The Long Night and co-writing that.
I think that's the same move Aaron Magruder pulled.
Do I have control?
That's such a big driving point, and that's why the people came to your particular show in the first place. They hear from the creator. It's his mouthpiece. It's George R.R. Martin, Game of Thrones. It's his mouthpiece about society, political movement. I think having the creator is a huge selling point. Like coming back to a show.
Having the creator be in control is a huge selling point. Because a lot of, even like, you can catch actors at the end of series or the end of seasons or whatever, the end of a movie, like they know that they weren't able to express exactly what they needed to express or like convey the way they needed to convey based on whatever extenuating circumstances.
In the Boondocks case, if you're a show that's strictly about having something to say, and then the creator goes and you come back for the 5th season and you're not really talking about anything,
Defeatist.
This defeats the purpose of even watching it.
All right, so I'll see you in 2020. That's how this is looking right now. 2020, we will be back to finish this Boondocks discussion. All right, let's get out of here.
Thanks.
Daps on the mic. Isaac, always a pleasure.
Always.
For the latest in entertainment news, follow HYPEBEAST on Instagram or go to hypebeast.com/entertainment.
My name's Jake. I'm an editor here at HYPEBEAST, and I'm here to talk about the climate strike that Patagonia is sort of taking the lead on, that is beginning the week ending in September 20th, which is a Friday. A lot of companies around the globe are sort of shutting down for one day to take a moment and allow their employees to go on strike to support the protests in favor of the upcoming UN Climate Summit and show their support for the world leaders that are going to hopefully make decisions that benefit the planet in alignment with the Paris Accord, which began in 2015 to avoid raising the global temperature by a maximum of 2 degrees Celsius, which would make the environment very unsustainable. Gotcha. It would make it unsustainable for human life. The big takeaway from this is that Patagonia is sort of taking the charge here. Other companies are following suit, like Ben & Jerry's, Burton, snowboarding company, Allbirds, Vivienne Westwood, Eileen Fisher, Etsy, and a few other, many other brands, I should say.
The list is pretty extensive.
Down.
I did look at that. Now, what is this change going to affect moving forward?
The closure will affect pretty much nothing.
Exactly.
Which is the point. It's not supposed to disrupt the consumers as much as it is to show support for...
It's kind of why they're letting them do it. They're like, all right, well, let's do this so we can show that we are supporting, but like a year from now, what do we think is going to happen?
We don't know. The climate summit that's coming up in the next week is intended to bring about some actionable change. The summit is intended to bring about actual change. They want the attendees to bring plans and not speeches because they want to initiate an actual movement to impact the environment in a positive way, reduce carbon emissions, so on and so forth. And so the closure on the 20th is sort of a prelude to the summit the following week, which will be capped by another protest on the 27th, which is at the end of that week.
Gotcha.
It's mostly to show support rather than actually bring about change in and of itself, and sort of spread awareness, spread the message, bring together people who are nervous about the effects of climate change.
I'm pretty nervous about it, not gonna lie to you.
Everyone should be, yeah.
I've been nervous for about 3 or 4 years now. Especially when you walk out into any street, you can't breathe.
Right, absolutely.
That's like the biggest issue is like I feel like I can't breathe, and that's never been the case in my years of living.
Right.
Something's been changing across the globe as far as temperature. Even growing up, when you see snowstorms in the winter and snowstorms now, it's completely different, like a hailstorm in New Mexico.
Yeah. Right. Patagonia, which I think it's fair to say they are a company at the end of the day. You know, every company has to focus on money, the bottom line, but Patagonia has proven itself to be one of the more thoughtful companies, if that isn't an oxymoron. You know, business is business, but at least they're giving a voice to this issue. One of the things that they did to support the movement was have activist Bill McKibben write a feature on their blog. He's known for writing a book called The End of Nature that was published in the late 80s, early 90s. It was one of the first general publications that tackled the greenhouse effect and opened the discourse on nature. And he's mentioned that the Earth really wasn't showing signs of the change back in the early 90s as compared to now, where even if you aren't noticing an immediate change in the weather, you'll notice that the effects of weather will become harsher. Like the recent Hurricane Dorian wasn't caused by climate change, but the effects, the strength of it, the unexpected shift up north that it had could be attributed to the change in nature. It's making these storms heavier and more lethal, as he notes on the blog.
I'm in like that gray area when it comes to this. I feel like it's so obvious that something is wrong.
Right.
It's so even like the water levels, the sea level is rising because of the glacial impact of melting glaciers. Like that's a real thing.
Definitely.
You don't need someone to tell you. You can see it happening. Like if you go to Jones Beach or you go to any beach, and last year you were there to this year when you took a picture, the shoreline's shorter.
Yeah.
I can go on about this for days.
Well, I think I noticed it myself. I grew up in Florida all my life. I spent 23 years before I left after college, and when I was a kid, it was beautiful in the winters, 50, 60 degrees, no colder than that. You didn't get snow because it was Florida, but you'd wear a hoodie and you'd be perfectly comfortable, and it was a nice reprieve from the summer. And nowadays, it's straight 80s through even the winter, and that's not including the 90, 100 degree summer. I mean, right now it's, as of late September, it's still really, really hot in Florida. It's crazy how much has changed in the past 2 decades.
It's something needs to be done. And what's going to happen is you're not going to see it for another 20 or 30 years if you start affecting the appropriate change now.
Right. As of the past 4 years, actually, the Paris Accord, it went to action. It was enacted 4 years ago in 2015. Since then, human activity has already raised the global temperature by 1 degree Celsius, which is a small number, sounds small, but the impact is already noticeable. So you can imagine what's going to happen if the Paris Accord is not heeded, as America has announced that it's not going to heed it. There could be reprimands that include global temperature rising up to 3 degrees Celsius, which will be very noticeable. But again, this is all down the road. What people are hoping to do with these protests, with these strikes, is raise awareness and hopefully minimize the effects of it and keep it down maybe 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2 degrees Celsius at the absolute maximum, which would, well, we'll see what happens in the next couple decades.
I'm going to bring up my usual Terminator reference with Skynet and wanting to protect the world from humans. So, yeah, every movie that you watch, there's always a reference where humans are viruses.
Yeah.
Or they're like a virus where they just move into an area and take over completely. Terminator's real.
Yeah, it's funny, like when you think about the movie villains, like in recent Marvel movies in particular, you got the DC movie as well, you got Aquaman, you got Thanos in the Marvel movies. Their methods questionable, but their intention may not necessarily be
that crazy.
Yeah, may not.
I'm going to say it for you.
Unjustified.
It's not that crazy at all. And I'm like, oh, they are polluting the seas. Jesus.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to stay up to date with you. I'll catch you later. Thanks for stopping in.
For the latest in fashion and style, follow HYPEBEAST Style on Instagram or go to hypebeast.com/fashion. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of The Hype Report. You can find out more about the show and listen to other episodes on hypebeast.com/radio. You can subscribe to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anywhere else that you listen to podcasts. Leave a comment and let us know what you think about this week's topics. You can reach out to me on Instagram at Mikey Dab, and that's 2 B's. And shout out to the editorial team. I'm Mikey Dab, and thanks for listening to The Hype Report. Any comment, opinion, or suggestion made by any person contained in this episode does not represent HYPEBEAST in any way, and those genuinely are their individual, personal opinion and thoughts towards the topic shared.